So luck is not chance. It is in fact something that you can intentionally increase in your life so that more favorable events start showing up for you. There really is a difference between those who believe that they are lucky and those who believe that they are not. And this is reflected in the results that they receive. However, in our modern day society, we have been absolutely brainwashed to the point where you don't even realize that it has occurred to believe that you are unlucky or that luck doesn't exist, and yet you do not have influence over your life or your reality, and that level of thinking might as well be the same level of thinking as thinking you are unlucky. Thoughts like, why does this always happen to me? I never get it right. Nothing good ever happens to me. It's essentially feeding bad luck and continuing to allow more of those kind of outcomes to come into your life. However, in actuality, you have much more influence over reality and what starts to be produced and come into your life than you've ever been led to believe. Like I said, we've been brainwashed to believe the opposite, that we're helpless and you have a certain lot in life and you can't really do much about it, that you're unlucky, and life is down to chance. They kind of attribute and create this synonymous definition with luck and chance, but they are two totally different things. Again, when in actuality, you have a lot of influence over reality. And by believing that you are lucky, by learning how luck actually works and being more intentional with it, I promise you, you will start seeing more favorable outcomes, events, results, and people find their way into your life. And so in this video, we're going to do exactly that. Why luck is not chance and how you can start to increase this. And again, we're going to go over practical things you can start doing right away, not only that are going to help you immediately, but over time to become genuinely a more lucky person. And one thing I will say before we move on to all of that, you did not come here to struggle. Life is not meant to be suffering, right? If we believe we're unlucky or why always me or I can never have X, Y, and Z, and we give into that programming and brainwashing or allow it to continue to influence us, then of course we might believe that the world is filled with suffering and that's all there is, that it is a struggle and we're going to continually struggle, or that we are unlucky, not realizing that it's believing this, which then influences reality and then creates more of that same outcome. And so life can be a lot easier. Life can be incredibly joyful while you're also thriving. That is a reality that is available to you. And I would argue that being lucky and increasing your luck is what will help provide that for you. So let's dive into the meat, I should say, of this lesson, the bulk of what we're going to cover, and also how you can start doing this to become more lucky yourself. So let's start with some of the differences between those who tend to have bad luck and those who tend to have good luck. And you will almost find this across the board if you observe someone you believe is lucky versus someone who you believe is not so lucky. And typically we'll look at most people and they seem not so lucky. That's the more common operating kind of mode we will see because of what we've already previously gone over. But ultimately, bad versus good luck, you'll notice a lot of people who seemingly have bad luck experience quote unquote negative outcomes most of the time, while good luck, favorable outcomes, right? That's nothing new there, right? It seems that people with bad luck are always in a rut, while people who are in a good luck always are anticipating the good, right? A person who is unlucky always seems to be complaining about their current circumstances. They're always complaining about how bad their luck is and the results of that bad luck, at least in their eyes. While someone who has good luck seems to always have this anticipation that good things are going to happen, right? Someone with bad luck has a kind of why always me type of attitude, and we call this a to me level of being. Another way of saying that is a victimhood level of being. Why always me? This always happens to me. Why is my luck so bad and their luck so good, etc., etc. Always finding the problems that are in their lives and always kind of hyperfixating on those. Someone who has good luck, you will find, is typically very grateful and believes that everything will work out in their favor. And that's a huge mindset mindset to have, and they don't think that only when it seems like good things happen. They think that even when something might be a bit confusing. They think that even when they're not exactly sure why something is showing up. So maybe they're going through a storm. Maybe they're going through what someone might think is a negative outcome, but they respond very differently. Instead of complaining about it or why always meing all over this situation that seems negative, they'll usually have more of an attitude of actually being grateful for it because they know it's going to reveal something, show them something, help them, but having a mentality of, again, positive anticipation, and everything always works out for me and in my favor. I live in a friendly universe that always has my back. One coming from I live in basically an unfair reality and universe, the other coming from the opposite. I live in a friendly universe that always has my back. And again, simple is low consciousness versus high consciousness. Someone who is incredibly unlucky, you will almost always find, if we were to look at Hawking's scale, that they are on the lower end most of the time when it comes to their level of frequency, consciousness, etc. And you'll find with people who are incredibly lucky that it's the opposite. They seem to be, again, more grateful. They seem to be more in joy, in bliss, in peace, in love, in acceptance, in willingness, in courage, and those higher levels of emotions more often than not. And that's a very important thing, and that these things that are happening here are typically the effects of being in that higher level of consciousness. When you're in higher levels of consciousness, yes, you'll have favorable outcomes. You will anticipate good things happening, right? Because you trained yourself to do so. You'll be grateful because you're in those frequencies. You will know everything's going to work out for you because you get different perspectives at higher levels of consciousness as well, right? And so this idea of practice is you will get good at whatever you practice. We can always go, I like this saying, so I'll just write it down. So it's the positive or negative scavenger hunt, right? We can go on either. And here's the deal. If you go on the negative scavenger hunt, you will find a ton of things on that scavenger hunt. You will be the best at it if you practice it. But if you go on the positive scavenger hunt, you will also begin to master that. If you are the person who looks for the good in things, and we'll cover this in a little bit later, why this is so effective, and even a scientific principle that shows if you do this, you will get better results. But if you go looking for the positive, and you go on the positive scavenger hunt, which is as available to you as the negative, it's all a choice. So which one you go on is a choice. It's not, no one's forcing you to do one or the other. Now, you might habitually do more one or the other based on your programming and what you've been doing before this, but both can be learned, and you get better at either through practice. And so when it comes down to luck, there are not people who are born more lucky or people who are born less luckily, no matter how we want to justify that, and many people will argue that and everything else. Ultimately, you come in, and based on your programming and everything and what you learn in childhood will determine a lot of this, but once you become awake and aware of this, you can then start retraining yourself. So I was programmed as well as a young kid. I had a very, very negative mindset when I was younger. I was depressed as a child, a teenager. I had a very poor view of the world. I would have been exactly in that side of the bracket, right? I would be in the bad luck category. I believed I was unlucky. And even if you're not saying exactly those words, I believe I'm unlucky, again, it could be anything that's kind of around those lines. Like only bad things happen to me. You know, nothing good seems to happen to me. When something good happens, I know something bad's going to come after. These are all kinds of levels of mentality that lead to bad luck and continual bad outcomes. And when I was thinking like this, and I believed myself unlucky, and I was going on the negative scavenger hunt, I was becoming broke. I was finding myself in terrible emotions all the time. I was homeless at one point in time. I struggled to get along with people and had a lot of trouble finding the people I connected with. And not that it would have been a joy to connect with me, because I was very, very negative, right? And so I experienced that side of things. I'm aware of what's at that side. But when I started going on the positive scavenger hunt, when I started moving more from what we're covering here and what else we're going to cover here and then later in the video, I noticed that my results started changing. When I started anticipating good things happening, when I started looking for the positive, even seemingly in a negative situation, when I started being grateful for what I did have while anticipating the good yet to come, kind of expecting it, but in this kind of like, it'll be this or something better kind of way, everything started to change. My life started to change. New opportunities started to present themselves because I was coming from a base of at one point being broke and homeless. That's where I was at one point in time to where it's very, very different now. And I attribute that because I changed my thinking. I changed the way I looked at the world. I changed, again, what I put my focus on, and I changed what I practiced, and I started practicing the positive scavenger hunt much more to the point where it became habitual to go on that scavenger hunt rather than the negative. One thing that absolutely helped me as well, and this, I mean, with the homeless stuff and being broke, this was a huge one, was responsibility. And I'll explain what I mean there. One other great indicator that someone is on this side is that they have given up responsibility for their life. They are handing it off because the to-me way of moving is a blame game. It is a victimhood. It's not my fault X, Y, and Z. It's not my fault I haven't progressed. It's not my fault that I chose those thoughts or went in the negative scavenger hunt. It's XYZ fault. It's the government's fault. It's this person's fault. And even if you think you are completely justified in saying that, here's the deal. It's not going to help your situation. You are a creator. Life is taking cues from you, not the other way around. If you're waiting for the cues from life, you're going to be waiting a very long time. If you're floating in the ocean and you're like, you know what, I just want you to take me to a beautiful island, you're going to be floating in the ocean for a very long time or end up somewhere you don't want to be. But if you start taking responsibility for your life, and this is not like just in actions you take physically, even though we can include that. This is you start taking responsibility, again, if you're going to go on one or the other, if you're going to see yourself as lucky or not. So essentially your thinking, your feeling, and what you do from that place, you're going to notice that your luck changes very quickly. You know, when you start taking responsibility for the fact that you are a creator and life is following your cues, life will start to pay attention. The universe starts to see that you're serious, and you can see a lot of things start to flip. Again, when I work with people, you know, usually I don't work with people who are into me, but everyone, for the most part, unless they've gone through training, have it a little bit in them. So we will work on this, on just moving them more into their creatorship and being like, look, you are a powerful creator, whether you're fully embodying it now or not. So let's keep moving the needle so you're embodying it more, you're taking responsibility for your creation, and you'll notice when you do this, you become much more lucky. It gets you out of this victim level of thinking, which essentially means you get out of low consciousness. When you are in low consciousness, you have less energy. You actually have less energy. Your energy is so drained when you're in low consciousness. It's hard to create if you have no energy to create with. And so when you're in low consciousness, of course you're going to be unlucky, or what we consider unlucky, because you're unable to even create powerfully. You're giving your attention, what energy you do have, to the things you do not want, and then it's creating more of the same. When we start taking responsibility for our lives, responsibility for the fact that we are a creator, we are creating our lives, we are not a victim to it, you start gaining a ton of energy because you're now coming from high consciousness. And at high levels of consciousness, if we were to look at the Hawking scale, for example, you'll notice the energetic log, the level of energy you then have access to goes way up. And you're seeing those numbers like, 50, 75, 100, 100, whatever, 125, 150. You're seeing like, oh, it looks like it's just a slight increase in energy. It is on a logarithmic scale, which essentially means it is an exponential jump in energy as you move up the consciousness scale. So no wonder people at higher levels of consciousness are incredibly lucky, because by law they have to be. They have much more energy. They have much more magnetism. The higher your consciousness is, the more energy you can then put on the things you want to bring in. The more favorable events start coming in because you literally are sending more energy out there. That's literally happening as you and your energy is increasing. So we'll bring a little guy here. This is you. And you're literally increasing your energy, you're increasing your light, you're shining this energy and light on the outcomes you wish to come in. Again, you're anticipating the good, you're observing that, you're grateful, what you appreciate appreciates. You're like, everything works out in my favor, and then it does, because you then have more energy at your disposal through doing this to actually draw those things in. It becomes magnetic, and you're able to draw those things in. And so when we take responsibility for the fact that we're a creator, and we stop with this delusion delusional thinking that someone's going to do it for us, everything begins to change. If you get even one thing away from this video, and that's going to help you become a lot luckier, is to just take responsibility for your creation and for your life. The moment you do that, everything begins to change, because when you take responsibility and you wake up to this, do you think you're going to choose to go positive or negative scavenger hunt now that you know what happens? You're going to choose to do the positive more. Do you think you're going to learn and choose to raise your consciousness or lower it now that you're taking responsibility for it and you're aware of what happens? Well, you're probably going to choose to raise it. A lot of these things then begin to happen because as your energy goes up again, you start attracting in. Now, here is the crucial part to understand about why, if you believe yourself lucky and truly believe it, you end up being more lucky. And if you believe yourself unlucky and you're doing all this stuff and you're in low consciousness and all that kind of stuff, you end up being more unlucky. And it has to do with that we are creators, but there is something known as the observer effect in science. And there was an experiment done called a double slit experiment. It's been done so many times, probably more than thousands of times at this point, always getting the same results. And essentially, again, one thing we need to recognize first is that the physical world that we see here, you're seeing it here, you're seeing this physical world, I'm appearing physical to you, you're watching on your physical screen or whatever else. It actually comes from what we could consider the non-physical, right? So you have the non-physical, which is leading to the physical. Non-physical, we could also say it's the realm of consciousness, frequency, vibration. So ultimately, the non-physical is dictating what happens in your physical. Your thoughts, your words could be considered that too. Your emotions or energy in motion, what you're doing, again, with that stuff. When you're thinking things like this, it is the non-physical world that's leading to the creation of the physical, again, through your ability to create. And so the observer effect through the double slit experiment, what it showed was a very interesting thing about how reality operates. It showed that reality operates in the sense from kind of this quantum superposition where everything is kind of available, but you observe it into existence depending on your observation. And so what they did with the double slit experiment is they just kind of learned that observation is creating reality, is they would basically shoot these particles through these two slits, right? So it's a very small amount of matter. So, we know that atoms make up the physical matter and everything else, and there's an interesting thing about atoms. They're actually not physical, empty space and energy. But they shot, I think if it's electrons, I think it was photons, which is particles of light, through these two double slits, and they would hit the back wall and they would make a very predictable pattern, right? Because it was this physical stuff. If I had something, a physical thing, and threw it against the wall, you'd be able to map out its trajectory. It would make sense. Like if I had one of those things that stuck against the wall, you'd see it, and it would make a very obvious pattern on the back wall if I threw enough of those, right? Based on where I'm throwing it. So that's essentially what it did, making these two patterns that kind of corresponded with the slits and where they went out. But what they discovered over time is that if they didn't observe the experiment and let the particles go through unobserved, they didn't make this same pattern as if they were physical things that hit the wall. They made what's known as a wave pattern. And the difference between a wave and a particle is wave is more energy, particle is more physical, right? And it made a wave pattern and had almost this kind of potentiality versus kind of actuality when the experiment was left unobserved. And so what they also noticed, if they didn't observe the experiment, that not only would it show against the wall that it was a wave, but retroactively would go back and basically show itself to be a wave the whole time, even if it was shooting off particles, right? And so depending on the observation would determine the result of the experiment. They also tested this when they would do waves through the double slits, and if they observed it, boom, right away turned into particles. And what it showed is if you collapse the wave function, which is this wave, and you do that through observation, it turns into particle. Literally meaning that through your ability to observe, you start creating the physical world. It exists as this potentiality, and when it's observed by a conscious being, which you are a creator, it starts to be fashioned more into what we call the physical. It's a very interesting experiment, and there's a lot of nuance and many more complicated versions, like the delayed choice experiment. That's also a double slit experiment, but it uses like these mirrors that only let 50% of the particle go one way and this way, and it's just, you can't trick it. It always does this, that when it is observed, particle, when it's not, wave. It is very, very, very interesting, and it gives us an idea of how our reality operates. When it is unobserved, it stays in this kind of continuous quantum superposition state where nothing is kind of concrete, but when it is, it collapses into a particle, into what we call the physical. Now, why is this important to know when it comes, why am I giving you this lesson when it comes to believing if you're lucky or not? Because when we're talking about observation, we're not just talking about with your physical eyes, right? We're not just talking about the physical world. Remember, the non-physical leads to the physical, and just to give you an idea, I've talked about this before, but 99.9+% of our reality is non-physical. You believe it's physical, which is really 0.00001% of reality, simply because you have been taught and programmed to experience the physical reality over anything else. To the point where many of you probably grew up, I certainly did, believing that the spiritual world was kind of woo-woo nonsense or religious nonsense, like that's the kind of the realm or kind of the vehicle it was given to us through, just kind of religion, and that's kind of nonsense. Those are just stories. It's not real. All these things are not real. And that the physical world, the Newtonian world, was what's real, and that's all that's real, and that's what's here, is what we can observe and everything else. However, that was a falsehood. The people who taught it to you, not like the teachers who taught it to you, but the people who created the system for it to be taught to you, also know it's not true and a falsehood, because they're aware of all these experiments done. They're aware of ancient knowledge that basically said the same. Hermetic wisdom, even the first principle of Hermetic wisdom is the all is mind. The mind is not a physical thing, or what we call a physical thing, right? That is a non-physical thing, but the non-physical leads to the physical, right? And so it is true, the way you think, the all is mind, everything is mental, you also have a mind, right? As above, so below. So as the all that is mind creates through its mentality, you create your world through yours. If you are to believe, or if you do believe that you are lucky, what is your observation in the non-physical? And how are you collapsing the wave function? What particles are you then producing, we could say, in the physical, right? If there's potentiality, and there's all this potentiality on this wave function, and you go on the positive scavenger hunt, how would these collapse into particles, right? If you're coming from the positive scavenger hunt, you believe you're lucky. You believe that favorable things happen to you. You just know that you are a good luck generator, as Peter Ragnar would say. Well, then you're going to collapse very different things into your world than someone who believes, got to really use the sports space here, the opposite, or goes on the negative scavenger hunt. You are going to collapse very different things into your physical world depending on what you are observing from a non-physical aspect. Again, you are a three-part being. We'll throw this in here as well. Yes, you are physical, but you're also mental and spiritual. That 99+% comes from the mental and spiritual part of yourself. That tiny percent is the physical. What you're doing on these two parts of yourself is what collapses, oops, that's a bad circle, into your physical world. And so by just saying things and believing things, and if you're saying them, it's probably because you have programs and habits of saying these things, but just by saying and believing things like, I am unlucky, I can't do it, why always me, not taking responsibility, it's everyone else's and their mom's fault for my life being the way it is, you collapse those particles, that physicality, that physical equivalence of the non-physical thoughts you're having into your reality time and time again. You are collapsing the ideas of being unlucky into your life, and therefore life, we'll take out the money, we'll cross, okay, we'll do this. You're then attracting those things into your life, right? You're attracting the low conscious equivalents into your life because you are observing that. You are using your ability, our ability to observe, the ability of our attention is like a superpower. We are conscious beings. And when a conscious being observes something, when it gives its attention to something, it starts drawing that in. And so when you're focused, again, on the negative scavenger hunt, from the spirit and mental, again, you're feeling that, you're seeing that, you're using your mentality with that. After enough time, it starts coming into the physical. And so what we want to do to become more lucky, we want to expect good things to come into our life. And I promise you, if you start really expecting good things coming into your life, even when it seems like it's not happening, good things will start showing up. And this is one of the traps. Because like I mentioned with anticipating the good or everything works out and how people who are lucky will work with what we could call a storm. It's what a lot of people will do with this, and some of you may even go out and do this, unfortunately, and I implore you not to or to come back if you do and kind of look at this lesson again, is they will expect good things for a time. But if it doesn't then meet their criteria of how things they think should work out, or it doesn't happen after enough time, then they just go right back to the old level of thinking, the negative scavenger hunt, the bad things happening, right? This has to be maintained because for this to happen at a significant degree where you're collapsing the wave function, bringing the non-physical into the physical, it does take some time because the physical is time and space. And so you're going to need to spend enough time and give enough energy and believe these things long enough for you to see the physical representations, the equivalents, again, the particles of that coming in. You need enough energy concentrated on luck, on good things happen to me, on all of these things for this to begin to happen. And I promise you, if you do this, you're going to just start noticing things start working out for you. And we are going to go over something in just a moment that is going to make this a whole lot easier. Because if you don't do this next thing I'm going to talk about, it's going to make it damn near impossible. So we will cover that because you might be like, I've been doing this, but it's still not working. I've been doing it for a while. Well, typically there's one thing that people are doing then that creates that time delay for things coming in. It's taking longer than it necessarily needs to. But just remember, expect good things because you, in every moment, with what you have your attention on, are using your ability to create through the observer effect, through your attention, through your inner world to outer world to create these outcomes. And so, again, from this side of things, just kind of keeping in that idea to do the positive or negative scavenger hunt, take responsibility, and just remember that, again, you are not a victim. The reason the victim struggles so much is because think of what the victim is doing from the observer effect. What wave functions are they collapsing into their physical world, into particle, right? If they're just floating at the sea and like everyone else do it for me, right? What level of thinking is that and what is that going to bring into their lives? Usually nothing favorable, which is why this level of thinking, of believing, of feeling doesn't work if you want to be luckier and have better outcomes in your life. Okay, some final thoughts here, including what I mentioned is going to make this a whole lot easier. So we'll jump right into that. And so when you're doing this, again, like I mentioned, a lot of people who have experienced something different because they're on that side of what bad luck looks like, they're going on the negative scavenger hunt, they're in lower levels of consciousness, they're not taking responsibility. So they're used to certain outcomes and events happening because of that, right? Because they're collapsing the wave function in that way in their life. They're using the observer effect in a way that harms them in a sense. They are putting their attention on those things inwardly, again, on that spirit and mental part of yourself, which is then creating those effects in your physical world after enough time, and it's kind of happening over and over again. So a lot of people then, they'll see something like this and go, okay, cool, I need to start doing this. They'll do it for a few days, a week, or whatever, and they're almost never doing it as well as they think, right? Because it takes some time and training to do this. You got to stick with it. And then something doesn't happen the way they think it should happen, right? Their mind thinks it should happen one way. Again, their ego would be a better way of saying that. Or it doesn't happen as quick as they think it should happen. Not how quick it should happen or how quick it needs to happen for you, but what they think it should, how quick it should happen. And what happens is they then start putting all of this importance on it needing to happen. When you raise importance towards something, essentially another way of putting this that might be more familiar is you raise attachment to something. It repels and pushes away whatever that thing is. So if you go, I need to become lucky no matter what, or my life's gonna be ruined, I gotta get this, I gotta da-da-da-da, and you're putting all this pressure on yourself, there's a principle known as the law of balance and harmony, which has to alleviate that pressure. And the way it alleviates is it kind of pushes this thing away. It has to balance things out. And so one of the most important things you can do, see, just keep using that word, is to lower the importance. Now, understand that lowering the importance doesn't mean lowering the priority. A lot of people mistake this like, oh, I should just not put my attention on it. But remember what's creating your reality. It's your attention, what you're putting your attention on, collapsing the wave function. So it's not about not giving your attention. People think, well, they're using the word importance and kind of conflating it with this idea of priority. Priority just means you're giving your attention to something. Actions express priorities, for example, right? If you prioritize working out, well, or someone does, you'll see them probably at the gym a lot or working out a lot or doing whatever else it is, eating well, etc. Like if they prioritize health, we'll say, and fitness, right? If they do not do that, then health is not a priority for them, right? Or to whatever degree. If someone prioritizes, whatever, just learning, let's say a language, you'll probably notice them at study quite a bit. Where someone might say that they are, but you'll notice they're at study every now and then. It's not really a priority. So there's a difference between importance and priority. Importance is a pedestalization, right? So importance is, let's say you're here and you think you need to have this thing to save your life, or you're not going to feel good. Essentially, importance is a feel good when mentality. And what that means is you believe your life will be fixed, will be better, and you can feel good when something happens. So I will feel good once I'm lucky. But like I described on the difference between what is unlucky and lucky, is the lucky person's already grateful. The lucky person is already positively anticipating the good things to come. The lucky person already expects good things to happen. They weren't just lucky and then came into that belief. It is they believed those things first, and then the luck started to follow, or the effects of thinking in that way started to follow. Because they didn't follow feel good when, they followed feel good now. Don't need to write the good again. So feel good now. When you feel good now, you lower the importance because you're basically saying it'll be this or something better, because even if I don't get the exact thing I think I want, I already feel good. It takes the pressure off whatever it is that you say needs to come in from needing to come in, right? It is a detachment. It doesn't mean lower the priority, but it means you would say something like, my preference is for this to come in, but it's totally okay if that never happens. I'm going to feel good either way. I'm going to embrace and be grateful and appreciative and do it anyway. And then people's minds go to, well, the whole reason I'm doing it is to get that thing. You will still have amazing things come in, and potentially the exact thing you're thinking of, right? If you do this, you will absolutely become lucky, and that will provide you with opportunities and so much coming in. But if you raise importance and you're here and you got this thing up on the pedestal, whatever the thing is, and you see yourself lower than it, you see yourself as, I need this thing, or I'm done, I can't go on, whatever, all you're doing is causing it to be repelled. When you lower the importance, you're literally like lowering it to yourself, and it can start coming in. Again, a great analogy for this is always in relationships. When you have a healthy person, we'll say, because this, you can have like codependency and things like that, but it's not usually good for anyone. But let's say in relationships, if someone really is needy, right, towards you, and let's say it's not even a relationship, someone you're dating, and they're really needy towards you, they're kind of like, you can feel, depending on you, to feel validated or loved. Like it's all on you, for their happiness is dependent on you. It's typically a very repellent thing. You want to you don't want that pressure, right? You don't want to be put in that situation, and usually that's what drives people away. In dating dynamics for men, a lot of the times too, that's the advice. You can't be needy, right? If you're in that way, it causes this repelling thing. You have to show that you're self-sufficient. You have to show, not just show like as an appearance thing, but actually be that, I wanted to go on a date with you or whatever else. However, it's totally okay if we don't. Even if you really do, it'll be this or something better, or it's not meant to be perfectly fine. You got to be almost okay with leaving it and leaving it behind and being that's completely fine. Again, I'm talking about now everything, not just dating, relationships, dynamics, right? And so it's in that same way you want to treat when you're working on this. If you treat, I've got to do this or blah, 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 you're going to create importance. The way you lower the importance is, again, something like this. It'll be this or something better, right? My preference is this, but it's totally okay if that never happens. That will lower the importance when it comes to this, right? Now, one thing you're going to start noticing as you start doing this is you're going to get some intuitions or hunches. This is a big part of being quote unquote lucky. Your intuition and your hunches start kicking in because you're raising your frequency and vibration and your consciousness. And those hunches and intuition were always there. But when you're in a victimhood level of being, when you're in lower frequencies, it's kind of like it's muddled. You can't hear it too clearly. You might not even know it's there. You're not tuning in too much to it. And so you want to follow hunches. And here's what I'll say about this. This is kind of like the action part of this, right? We talked about your thinking, we talked about your feeling, how your spirit, mental, and physical. On the physical side of it, though, you're still going to make movements because life's going to start setting things up for you now. Again, collapsing the wave function. Then follow the hunches that come through. These are the opportunities. And a lot of times you will not know why or how something is going to work out, but you will know that something inside of you, your intuition, there's a hunch that this will lead to something, or you just feel good in following this thing. You'll be amazed at what begins to unfold, and again, how lucky you become if you follow the hunches that you receive. As you lower importance, as you start seeing the good in things and go on the positive scavenger hunt, this will start to get louder. Your intuition will start to become more clear because you're hanging out on frequencies where it is more audible, we'll say. It's not necessarily audible always, but just to follow the analogy, it's like, oh, you're kind of tuning a radio station, you're getting static, and you kind of hear a wobbly voice, and then finally you lock it in, and now you can hear it crystal clear, right? So as you're doing this, this is what's going to happen to your hunches, to your intuition, which allows you to then start taking aligned action that basically is saying, hey, do this, and you're going to have a fortuitous event happen, or an opportunity come through, right? There's a great book called The Game of Life and How to Play It by... I forgot her name. Scoville Shin. I forgot her first name. Florence, I think, Scoville Shin? Yeah, someone can confirm that in the comments, I believe. And it's a great one to read, especially when it comes to hunches and intuition and the magic that happens when you follow this. Again, everything we've gone over before this is going to make you luckier, is going to allow for these opportunities to start presenting themselves, and then you want to follow through with it. Now, some things that are going to help you with this as well is there are sayings you can say. This is from Peter Ragnar. He wrote a book called The Awesome Science of Luck, which is going to show you even more evidence to why luck is a thing that you can generate and build for yourself. And he will provide much more science. I only brushed up on the double slit experiment and told you that it existed. Learning more about that can help. But he goes over even more in that book, more strategies and everything, if you want to check it out. I'm not endorsed by it or anything. I just have it. I really enjoy it, and it's been very useful for me. Now, one of the mantras or affirmations he gives in that book that's very powerful is, I am an amazing good luck generator. Again, based on everything else we've gone over, how powerful that will be if you're giving your attention to this and just repeating this throughout the day. I like to do it just as I'm doing something else. I'll just repeat this phrase, I am an amazing good luck generator. I'm an amazing good luck generator. I'm an amazing good luck generator. And again, if you are giving that inwardly, if you are giving that from the observer effect, if you're doing that over and over again, you will start becoming an amazing good luck generator. You will start attracting the things an amazing good luck generator starts attracting. Again, you don't have good luck start coming in and then start doing these things. You start doing these things and then good luck starts to occur for you. Now, one last thing you can do, you can have what's called a physical good luck charm. Everyone's heard of this. I always pretty much have them on me unless I'm wearing shorts that don't have good pockets. I have this one, and this is a flower of life kind of medallion. I also have some rings. It's kind of made of gold. Gold is a good metal to have because it absorbs energy very well. So I have just these random rings in my pocket. But what I will do is I will use them as good luck charms. I will use them as triggers to remember this phrase. And there'll be times I'll just hold them and I will focus energy on them while saying this phrase. Now, you don't have to go that crazy if you want. I don't consider it crazy, but I know some people might. If that doesn't resonate with you, you don't need to do that. But that is another little hack, again, we can call it a hack, or idea that you can use, and then it's always on you. You know, I have this necklace too. It's not, I don't use it as a good luck generator, but it can also be that as well. So if you wear something, you can also use that, like a bracelet, a ring, as something that triggers you saying these things, right? And then you imbue it with that energy. Because as you're saying this and you're feeling it, and let's say you're holding this, or you have a necklace, or you have something on you, not only is it a symbol of you being a good luck generator, but you also do imbue it with energy. Again, everything has frequency, and especially when it comes to objects, they will usually take on the energetic or frequency or quality of whatever's around them in the environment. This is why you can go into a room and feel, just going into a room and almost feel like a little more depressed or like a little more negative if the people who exist there most of the time are imbuing the room with that, usually not intentionally. But you can go into another room where it's someone who's incredibly positive, someone who has a great energy, and just by walking in the room feel uplifted because the room has taken on the quality of the energy that it's been exposed to most often. The objects in that room, certain objects absorb it even more effectively, things like crystals, one of the reasons people like crystals. Again, certain metals, maybe metals made of certain metals. But gold, for example, is a good one that kind of absorbs that energy. And if you're in that room, then imbuing it with this level of energy and these sayings, it will create an object that helps you in staying lucky as well. Becomes a good luck charm, becomes magnetic. Again, gold's a really good one. You don't need to. I don't even know what this is made of, but I just use it as a good luck charm. Now again, one of the things that's going to make you so lucky is learning basically lowering importance to a high degree, which I go over in this video here. And I'm essentially going over how you need to start ignoring reality, specifically your physical reality, in order to get some of the results you're looking to get. In fact, when you do this and you have more faith in your vision, on the positive scavenger hunt and so on, than the current physical circumstances, you will become luckier in my eyes than anyone you know. So I'd go check out that next.